Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Purdy Podcast, Discover the Joy. This is actually a follow-up episode to the one I posted on Tuesday. Tuesday, I talked to a caregiver, one of the best in the world, I think. She helps take care of my mom, and she was talking about ways to find good help to give you that break. But for some people, that's just not in the cards. They can't afford it. They don't feel right having somebody else take care of their loved one. So I wanted to continue that conversation with Jessica Marshall. She is a clinical social worker here at Baptist Medical Center, and that's her job, is to support families who are going through things like that, where we're taking care of sick loved ones. And what does your job entail?
So at this time, I'm currently the manager of our social services team, and they all get lots of those referrals from providers, from family members reaching out to their doctors, asking for help. I am a caregiver. I'm stressed. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And they want to explore options for themselves. What is out there that can help them?
And so you don't just help the person who is sick, but you help provide that whole support
Absolutely.
system.
It's a whole family. It's a whole care team that's involved, right? The doctors wanting support for the family member, the outside family. They could have siblings far off, all wanting support to help their loved one continue um, to relish this life, to continue to be at home, to feel supported.
Now, how important is it to make sure you find that time? Let's start there.
Yeah,
I know we got a lot of notes here because we got a lot of information that we want to share with you. But, how important is it? Because, at least from my experience, you're taking care of someone, you just go, go, go. They need something, you just get up and do it. You don't think, you don't take the time
Right.
to stop. So, how important is that?
It is so important because your loved one is so important to you, right? That is why you have become this caregiver, whether it just fell into your lap, whether you have decided this is what I'm going to do for my loved one because of XYZ. And in order for you to be in there for the long term, you have to take care of yourself. It's really goes back to the airplane adage where the oxygen, right? You put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on the other individual, because the weight of caregiving is so heavy. And a lot of times it does just fall on maybe one or two individuals. And a lot of times I also talk with families and say, if you weren't involved, if you weren't the caregiver, what would that look like? Well, if they lived in assisted living or somewhere else, they'd have a whole team, right? They would have someone that cooks, someone that helps do their laundry, someone else that helps move them, get them to the restroom. All of those activities would be covered by multiple people, and you're one person doing all of that work. So you have to take care of yourself.
There are some people who either can't afford to have help, they're embarrassed
Yeah,
to ask for help. It's their mom, it's
it's
their aunt, it's their friend. I don't want to put that burden on anybody else.
sure.
What? So there's so many reasons why people don't ask for help.
Mhm.
But there are things that they can do to de-stress
Mhm.
and just find a little bit of relief. What kind of things can they do for
Sure.
themselves?
So something very easy, and we probably do it and not even think about it, and not intentional, is something as simple as breathing, right? Taking those deep breaths in those moments of stress. Just, inhaling, exhaling, intentional moments to breathe.
Do you mean like 30 seconds?
You could take 30 seconds, you could take 5 minutes, just breathe.
And what does that
Breathe through
do?
it. And really it's a biological response within ourselves
Mhm.
to, okay, relax. Just like I'm just thinking about when you're nervous about something, like even for this interview, take some breaths, Jessica, right? Helps just slow your heart rate down, relaxing your jaw, relaxing the muscles in your body, because stress causes that physiological response within us.
Mhm.
And so activating the breath and breathing could really just physically help you relax.
And what else?
And
What
something
else?
else as simple as listening to music, right? If that is something that you enjoy. I remember working with uh, a, a, a caregiver who was taking care of her spouse, and she mentioned to me that she loved Sam Cooke. And I At that time, I said, I don't know who that is. And so I said, but I can look him up on YouTube. I had my phone with me. I looked him up, and she told me a song. I played it for her. And even I saw that relaxation reaction with her, just watching her listening to this song from her younger years, and that she loved, and she was even kind of mouthing and dancing a little bit. And I thought to myself, what a reaction you're having in front of me. How much more impactful will that be when you take that time for yourself and listen to this music?
Does music, I mean, clearly it has a calming
Mm-hmm.
effect, but does it do something to the brain
Absolutely. It's
or?
totally therapeutic. It
Mhm.
can be very nostalgic and take you back to the moments and times. Maybe you have something wonderful associated with a song, or maybe it was a song that you and your husband loved and you're the caregiver for him. And it takes you back to that time where you went on this date, or you, which you had this wonderful romantic moment with your spouse. It's just so tremendous. Again, those physiological responses.
Now, I know to de-stress, just not in the caregiving situation with my mom, but just to de-stress, I like going outside. I
Yes.
can't even explain why
Mhm.
or what that does. And I'm sure you can explain it so much better, but I know that that helps also.
Absolutely. And I think another piece is it's helpful to kind of reflect and say, what did I used to do before I was doing this? What did I used to do? I used to go outside all the time. I used to garden. I used to do whatever things that were fun to you. And figuring out, how can I intentionally bring this back in my life, right? So as much as you just love the feeling of just going outside, well, let's see, can I carve out 15 minutes, 30 minutes to go outside while my loved one's busy with another task, or I have making sure that they're taken care of. I can go outside and just enjoy the air, just enjoy, um, again, getting away from the caregiving. So really, anything to manage stress would be anything that doesn't remind you about the
what
stress of a caregiver.
what's
Exactly.
happening.
What's
Mhm.
happening. So what does that look like to you? It could look like going outside. When I go outside, I forget everything. I just embrace the air. I embrace the plants. I embrace the beauty of being outside. So whatever that looks like to you, that helps you forget that you're in that caregiving mode, that can be a really helpful tool to manage stress.
And I did mention that, sometimes people don't like asking other relatives or asking
Hmm.
friends or neighbors for help, but maybe it's easier to get help from a stranger. You provide or find resources.
Yes.
So how does that work? How do you hook them up when people have no idea where to start looking for
Sure.
help and they might not be able to afford it?
Mhm.
So where do they turn?
So there's really lots of resources out in the community, and our team, they have great relationships with those resources, and referring them out. And also we do that by assessing the situation, right? What is it that you need, and what is the safest support to provide to you as a caregiver that can meet that need. So whether it is maybe someone that can just sit with your loved one. There's a lot of programs with volunteer sitters. People will just volunteer their time and just come and sit down. And there's a background check. They're bonded by the agency, and they can just come and sit. And while you do whatever it is, maybe you just want a nap, right? Sometimes that's all you want. I
Yeah.
just wish I could just take a nap. That volunteer can sit there, watch over your loved one while you go take a nap. So again, whatever it is that will help you manage the stress, we look to explore how that can be worked out, and give you the best resource for that need.
If I'm not a patient or don't have a loved
Hmm.
one who's a patient at Baptist, and I'm taking care of my loved one at home. There's no emergency,
Yeah.
so I don't have to go to the ER or anything like
Hmm.
that. But, how do I find somebody like you
Sure.
who fills that gap, who can support, who can point you into different
Hmm.
directions?
So one thing I really recommend would be, there's a lot of caregiver support groups. So in the community, again, not having necessarily working with a Baptist social worker, but these support groups are open to anyone that's a caregiver. And I think that's really a great place to start, because then you are connected with people who are experiencing what you're experiencing, who can normalize your frustrations, your maybe disappointments with my life didn't turn out how I wanted it to be. I had these dreams, and then I had to become a caregiver, and then I had to do these things. And then also, those agencies are also connected to other resources. So then it becomes, oh, I talked to this person, and then they told me about this resource, and then I was connected to this. So just that interconnectedness of caregiver support that's out there in the community, that is not with Baptists necessarily, but out there open to anyone that's a caregiver.
And I know also, we were talking earlier, I know the city of Jacksonville
Yes,
has resources, an
absolutely.
entire service
Hmm.
for caregiving and for
Yes,
seniors.
yes.
So, it's just like a couple clicks on Google
Hmm.
away. And if computer's not your thing, I bet you a neighbor, or I bet you a grandchild or somebody else can look it up for you.
Yes.
But also something, not asking for help, asking a neighbor,
Hmm.
hey, do you know of anyone, or have you heard of
Hmm.
anything in the community? I mean, does that, I guess that kind of takes the onus off of directly asking that person
Sure.
for help.
And I think sometimes we want to explore, why is asking for help so hard for you, right? I think that's something as a caregiver you want to really reflect on. Like, why do I have such a hard struggle about asking for help?
Have you found that?
Oh, absolutely.
And what are some of the
So
reasons?
sometimes, it's they're not going to do it like I would do it, right? I love mom, or I love my husband, and they're not going to do it with love. And it could be just, well, they don't understand, right? Or sometimes when people ask for help in the moment, as a caregiver, you have so many things in your mind, and you're so preoccupied that nothing comes to mind, right? It's like, I, thanks for the offer. Like, I can't think of anything for you to help me with right now.
Yeah.
And so in those instances, some strategies that you might want to use would be, start making a list. When something comes up, writing down a list. You could put it on the refrigerator. You could use the notes on your phone and just say, oh, it'd be really helpful if someone could pick up some groceries for me this week, or someone could do, just stop by and maybe just sit with him for an hour. I have this doctor's appointment coming up next week. And then when you get that call, or you see that person, and they say, oh, did you need anything? Oh, actually,
Yeah.
I need some groceries, could you bring
Well,
that for me?
and you brought up something really important. I
Mhm.
think it's not necessarily always asking for help with your loved one. There's
Exactly.
other stuff you got to get done. There's other
Yes.
stuff to do to keep
Hmm.
life going for
Right.
you, for others that may depend on you. But you're right, like maybe they can run and get groceries,
Hmm.
or maybe they can drop your clothes off at the dry
Yeah,
cleaners
whatever it
or
is,
something.
right? Because
Mhm.
you have so many responsibilities, right? On top of becoming a caregiver, you didn't stop being a spouse, right? You didn't stop being a mother to other children. You didn't stop these other, identities that you have. You just added another one, right? And how to balance all of that.
Yeah, it took me the longest time to break down and ask for help with a carpool to get my kids to school, because it's that mom guilt. I
Right.
work nights,
Hmm.
and so my kids are gone in the day, so I would wake up just so I could hug them and see them before they
Hmm.
went off to school, and I felt I had to do that every
Right.
day, but it was killing me
Yeah.
because I wasn't getting any sleep.
Hmm.
And finally I just said, hey, do you mind maybe one day, can you take them to school? And the relief, you just don't realize
Yeah.
until after you ask for something so simple how
Right.
much that helps. And is it me, or I seem to notice, I don't know, am I making this up, where the caregiver is so involved and so stressed and so emotionally attached and drained that once that loved one is no longer here, then the caregiver starts wrestling with health issues.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, statistically, especially if you are a caregiver with someone with a dementia or Alzheimer's disease, statistically, there's a high percentage of caregivers that actually die before their loved one, because that disease is so slow. It's progressive, but it's a slow progressive for many folks. And the caregiver, because they were worried about making sure they got to their appointments, they were worried about making sure their loved one took their medications, that they neglected themselves.
Mhm.
And another thing that happens too, if their loved one passes, is they become depressed because they have kind of lost themselves in the caregiving, and they really don't know what else to do, right? I was just used to taking care of mom all the time. Like, I don't know what to do with my life now. This is all I literally lived for. And now
And,
I don't know what to do.
and so there's depression that can set
Absolutely.
in.
Yes.
I wonder, how, to me, it would seem like there would be a sense of relief,
Sure.
but how does depression sneak into
Well,
that?
I think because their life purpose has changed from taking care of themselves to taking care of someone else. And when that someone else is gone, what is my life purpose now?
Hmm.
And so it can be really difficult for caregivers to adjust to that, especially again, because there wasn't that healthy boundary of, okay, I'm going to take care of myself, but then I'm going to take care of my loved one. It's all them, all them, all them.
When, I'm sure you see a lot of families
Mm-hmm.
here at Baptist. Um, when they are talking to you and explaining the situation, and you're able to direct them in the right way, and they find a little help and a little relief, what is their reaction to you? What do they say?
So they say thank you, right? But it really, to me, it's, I didn't do anything. That resource had been there the whole time, right? It was really, um, more, I would say, congratulations to them for realizing the help they needed, and for acknowledging it, because it is a difficult conclusion to come to, that I can't do this anymore, or I can't continue to do this, or I can't continue to do this alone. um, it's, I think it's a very humbling experience for them, because I believe there's a lot of disappointment attached to it, right? Because there was
Mhm.
such burden, and we say burden, I know it's kind of like a negative word, but the burden of taking care of this individual, whether it's maybe culturally, because this person was the matriarch of your family and you absolutely must take care of them, or your siblings or someone else, they've chosen not to be involved, and so it's, well, you're the oldest, so that's your responsibility, you're supposed to take care of mom or dad, um, or husband or wife, again, just from that cultural perspective of having that huge burden of responsibility placed on you. It's tough to see out of that.
But it also is important to know that you're not alone. You're not the only one
Absolutely.
going through something like this. I mean, there's
Yes.
so many people that
Hmm.
are, and they, it's just taking that first step and finding help.
Yes.
Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your insight.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, not a long conversation, but hopefully just enough to motivate you to get help as you care for your loved ones, so all of that burden doesn't fall on just you. And to know that there are free resources out there that can help. Jessica did send me some links, so I will post those, or you can just email me. I can send them to you. Email me at the Purdy Podcast, tpp@joypurdy.com, and I can send you those links. The next podcast in 2 weeks, that would be June 11th. That's a Tuesday. 17 times. That's how many times my next guest was stabbed by her estranged husband in her home in front of their 4 very young children. At the time, they were all elementary school or preschool age. And she survived. This woman survived. And she's telling her story, hoping you can learn from what happened to her. And she's also sharing the ways she's trying to make a difference for other domestic violence survivors. See you in 2 weeks.